Podot.
Welcome to A Pod Too Far, where we are reliving the golden era of war films from an age where special effects meant someone off-screen throwing a bucket of water over the cast. I'm Robert Hutton, and I've assembled my fleet in an ambush off Uruguay. With me, still insisting he was in Portuguese waters when he was sunk, is Duncan Weldon. Today, the 1956 naval drama, The Battle of the River Plate. I'm just going to say from the offset, this was Duncan's choice. Duncan, why are we watching The Battle of the River Plate?
Because it is an absolutely superb film, which bears rewatching, to preempt your final question. It's just, you know it's going to be a good film when you start watching it. It's in black and white, the dramatic music, and then the credits roll beforehand. And it's the only film I'm aware of where the ships are credited as who they're playing. And so, and HMS Cumberland as herself.
So the full credits are HMS Sheffield as HMS Ajax, the INS Delhi as HMNZS, as His Majesty's New Zealand ship Achilles, HMS Jamaica as HMS Exeter, and indeed HMS Cumberland as herself. Though weirdly, the film that's playing the Graf Spee doesn't get a credit. Bad agent, I guess.
I mean, even the ships that aren't playing themselves, they use generally ships of the same class, which will have looked identical, with the exception of the Graf Spee herself, who's they're subbing a US ship for her.
Yes, sadly, looking at HMS Sheffield's IMDb entry here, HMS Sheffield is known for The Battle of the River Plate, 1956, filmography, The Battle of the River Plate, never made anything else. So just just one of those one hit ships.
Yeah, well,
although they're credited above most of the cast.
Well, because this is a film about the ships. No, actually, it's not. It's not. Now, this might seem like a film about the ships, but actually, this film's called The Battle of the River Plate. The battle takes about 20 minutes in a 2-hour film. I mean, this is a film about everything that goes before and after the battle. But really, look, it's an excuse to get a half dozen World War II cruisers and just film them actually at sea. What I love about these sort of films is there are no special effects. These are just some big ships we filmed.
So unlike some of the other films that we've done, this is a film that not everyone will have heard of. Although I have a really striking memory that in about 1997, this was BBC Two's main film on a Saturday night, which actually I think is when I watched it. And they trailed it really heavily that they were going to be showing the Battle of the River Plate. Tell us very briefly, about the actual Battle of the River Plate.
So this is very early in World War II. 1939, in fact. And at the start of the war, the German Navy has these what are called pocket battleships. So they're sort of armed and armoured with big guns like a battleship, but they're cruisers. They're faster. They're a bit smaller. And they're out doing commerce raiding at the start of the war. So they're scattered around the globe, preying on Allied shipping. And this is about one of those, the Graf Spee, which is eventually
which has sneakily sailed before the war started.
Yes, very, very cunningly.
This is underhand. No. You're supposed to stay in port, declare war, and then you sail out. Yeah,
exactly. And it's preying on
the kind of people the Germans were, Duncan. Can't trust them.
And it's preying on British shipping in sort of the South Atlantic, Pacific, and all around sort of all of these British merchants. And this is about it being confronted by a squadron of British cruisers. They fight a brief battle. The Graf Spee puts into Montevideo for repairs. Uruguay is a neutral country.
So then it has a really exciting sort of naval battle first half, and then the second half is a sort of diplomatic. I mean, thriller is too strong a word.
It's a film about what's going to happen.
Diplomatic drama.
Yeah, it's diplomatic drama. So what's going to happen? So you've got this German pocket battleship, which has gone in to do repairs. It's allowed a certain amount of time to make itself seaworthy, but not prepare for battle, or it'll be taken into custody by the Uruguayans. Meanwhile, this Royal Navy task force is waiting outside, and it's about what's going to happen. Is it going to put out to sea or is it not? And I enjoy it. It's got some tremendous performances in it.
It struck me that this film comes out in the middle of the 50s. It's actually held back a year. This was a massive film when it came out. And when they have the early screenings, they're so successful.
They've got some real ships.
They've got real
it's a
ships.
massive film.
It does so well in the screenings that they hold it back a year so that it can be the royal film performance in front of the Queen and Prince Philip, who had been in the Navy.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a good one for Prince Philip. He would have enjoyed it.
You're saying Prince Philip would have enjoyed it and you didn't. That's the undertone I'm getting
I'm
at.
not saying I didn't enjoy it. I'm saying that Prince Philip probably enjoyed it more.
Yeah. But it's a massive hit at the time, isn't
It's
it?
a huge hit. It's one of the 3 biggest British films of the year.
Yep, there you go.
And for some reason, and I'm assuming that almost everyone in the audience would have known the story because this is only 16 years before, and one feels that every schoolboy would have known the broad
and I think it
outlines.
harks back to sort of the start of the war and the naval war at the start of the war, which I think the film shows really well is of such a different character to the naval war in the second half. So, this is when German commerce raiders are still these pocket battleships, which, coming up to merchant ships, taking the crew on board, sinking the merchant ship, dropping off the crew later. This is not the U-boat war.
It's all terribly civilized.
It is. It's very, very, very. It's almost like harking back. It's like it puts me in mind of. I'm a big fan of the sort of Jack Aubrey, Stephen Maturin naval novels by Patrick O'Brian. Saying Napoleon, Age of Sail, Napoleonic ships taking prizes, all of that. I mean, this is the naval war fought like that, but 150 years later. Of course, it doesn't last. The German pocket battleships are all eliminated quite quickly in the war, and then, like in the First World War, you go back to unrestricted U-boat warfare, where it's not a case of pulling up alongside saying, "Could you all terribly mind jumping on board this ship?" It's just ships being sunk and merchant seamen dying.
Throughout the war, there is this slightly odd thing with the war at sea, where you sink a ship, and then if there are survivors in the water, you pick them up.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's not happening in every other. I suppose you're taking prisoners and so on, but the sort of the Monty line at El Alamein that we have to kill the enemy.
Yeah,
that's how we're going to win this, by killing more of them than they kill of us.
Yes.
The Navy, and this is observed by both sides. The Navy sort of say, once we got rid of the ship, we rescue the men.
Particularly, and I think this comes across really well in this film, and I think that's one of the reasons it's so successful in that. It's a look back at the war and at actual events of the war, but at an earlier part of the war, when the war at sea is this slightly more, chivalrous is the word. It's almost this sort of much more gentlemanly conduct, what's going on. I think it's the perfect film to make in the 1950s.
At the heart of the film
and it's also a British victory, of course.
It's at the heart of the film is this relationship between Captain Dove, the captain of the Africa Shell, who is sunk at the start of it, but
taken on board by the Germans,
and Langsdorff, the German captain, and it's an oddly sort of touching relationship. Dove, the film is actually based on Dove's book, so the actual backstory for this film, why make this film, is because Powell and Pressburger, who are at this stage sort of Britain's leading filmmaking team, producer, writer, director, never quite clear which of them was doing which. I mean, it is clear which of them was doing which role, but they were a team and they shared the credit on everything. They were invited to an Argentine film festival, and they don't feel they can go unless there's a work justification. And someone gives, this is the story, and someone gives one of them Dove's book.
Yes.
Which is called something like "I Was a Prisoner on the Graf Spee."
Yeah.
I don't know what it's about. And they go, "Ooh, what? We could do this. We could." And the Navy are very, very keen to cooperate, lending 3 of their ships.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of that's sort of how this comes about. And the Dove memoir is the way that they can make it work. I mean, one of the interesting things about this is that really you don't really see the German side of the battle at all. You see the battle aboard the British ships, and you see the British captains who are held on board the Graf Spee, and you see the Graf Spee being shelled from their perspective.
Yeah.
Which is quite good. That's quite a kind of, hang on, which side are we rooting for?
Exactly. But it's also, another reason for that, I think, is that the American ship standing in for the Graf Spee, she looks big and impressive on screen, but we don't go into, techie, wrong uniform, whatever, usually in this podcast, but she's too big. She's got too many turrets. She's got an extra funnel.
And she's not allowed to fly a swastika.
No. The Americans agreed to let the production company use it as long as she didn't fly a swastika. So
or have any Nazi uniforms on board.
Yeah, exactly. So
the
German sailors have American helmets on. There's lots and lots of accuracy problems about the German ship, and they sort of try and get over that early on in the script by saying, we've rigged her up to look like an American cruiser, because they were using disguises, but conveniently we've disguised her as the ship she actually is. It's sort of the excuse used.
There's also, and again, this is a recurring theme in these films of this era, Langsdorff is a nice Nazi.
Yeah.
In fact, he's barely a Nazi at all. So the scene where Dove is taken at the start, taken to Langsdorff's cabin, there's some really interesting saluting going on there. So the nasty Nazis are doing the Hitler salute, the sort of the one hand in the air. Langsdorff, who, and this is truthful, I think, because I think he was photographed. I think when they're burying their sailors at sea off Uruguay, they're obviously being watched, and I think at that stage he's photographed, and he is doing an old-fashioned naval salute, while the men alongside him are doing the arm-out salute. And from this, it has been declared that Langsdorff was not really on board with the whole Nazi project.
No, but you're right. This is a film which the German character really is very, very sympathetic and is as much a main character as anyone else. That's the thing. It's a film about the Battle of River Plate, which is really, to an extent, about both sides in the battle.
I don't know whether Captain Dove was a Yorkshireman. I feel strongly that there ought to be more Yorkshiremen in film. I was really quite, sort of thought, you can trust, Probably what everyone would have known watching it that is not obvious in the film, and I didn't know until I looked it up, is that Langsdorff kills himself.
Yes, so this is sort of the dramatic climax of the film is, the ship it's going to have to leave the harbour. And when it goes out there, it's going to be facing a Royal Naval Task Force.
And he thinks it's going to be a much larger Royal Naval Task Force.
Yes, because they've spread the rumour that reinforcements have arrived. It's actually not. It's going to be roughly what he faced before. One of the ships has gone. Cumberland's arrived, played by herself. All of it's going to be... It will be a tough fight. One they probably wouldn't win, but it's not impossible. But he thinks it's going to be impossible. So the decision he took was to scuttle the ship.
Save his crew.
The crew all go into captivity. There's not a second sort of Battle of the River Plate. And then, he went back to where he was staying. He once he'd sorted out all of the crew going into, internment, he laid out the ensign of the ship on the bed. He lay on and he shot himself, which is not portrayed in the film. He's sort of left at the end looking sad. They don't cover his actual suicide. He'd wanted apparently to go down with the ship, but was persuaded by his officers. He had a duty to make sure the crew all went into internment.
So
first.
when you see this final conversation at the end between Dove and Langsdorff, you do get the sense that, again, this is one of these ones. As I say,
an interesting decision not to show it.
If you knew what was coming next, I suspect that scene makes a lot more sense than it did when I. It didn't. Not that it didn't make sense, but I suppose it's freighted with more meaning.
But it's sort of an interesting. Maybe it was just the feeling that in the mid-50s the audience will have known what happened to Langsdorff. We don't need to show it. But it is quite an odd cinematic decision. Not even you could just have the gunshot from a closed hotel door. You don't need to see it. But
I mean, it makes this film quite a child-friendly film.
Yes. It's a bloodless war film.
Tradition of war films that you can take your 6-year-old to.
Yeah.
It's certainly, your 6-year-old in the mid-1950s who would have been prepared to sit through it. I'm not sure that many 6-year-olds now would be willing to sit through it.
But there's some really interesting diplomatic manoeuvring.
Take them for the first half, Send them out to get popcorn.
It's often said the actual Battle of the River Plate lasted about an hour. And they cut it down to about 20 minutes.
Yeah, which actually is not bad.
It's not bad. It's not bad. But then that does leave you with an hour and 40 minutes in a film called The Battle of the River Plate, which are fundamentally not about the Battle of the River Plate.
It's obviously at the time the title was much more meaningful. Again, I'm not sure how many people could find the River Plate
No,
on a map
no.
today. I'm not, if I'm entirely honest, entirely sure whether I could find.
And in terms of making this as a film that you can sit through if your 6-year-old has the patience, this is where the artistic license has been applied. The artistic license has been applied to slightly sanitize some of the battle. So there's this wonderful sort of reminiscence from the gunnery officer on board Ajax. So when they spotted the Graf Spee, his memory after the war was, suddenly the captain's voice comes through, the loudspeaker to the gunnery room, and it's not the usual enemy sighted, engage. It's fire at the fucker is the order, which doesn't make a 1950s film on how you handle there's much more decorum on the bridge.
Yes.
Also, in the actual battle, many they were spotted quite late, and many of the senior officers were wearing their pajamas when the engagement started.
In America, this was called the Pursuit of the Graf Spee, presumably because the Americans had no idea what the Battle of the River Plate was.
But did they know what the Graf Spee was? Is it enough?
They might. It's a really. Yes, that's a.
I think these were. I think the Graf Spee, the Bismarck, all of that. These are big, well-known names at the start of the war.
So my main question, watching this quite a lot, was what is going on during the battle?
In what sense?
My problem is that all of the ship's bridges look quite similar.
Yes.
And although I can recognise John Gregson, I couldn't immediately remember. I may not have been paying full attention when it was explained to me which ship he was captaining. Yeah. I worked out that he was the Exeter. But it's who's been shot? Who's been hit? What's going on? Where are they? And you talked about Master and Commander. And actually one of the things that Master and Commander, the film, did, which I thought it did really well, was you do sort of know in that where the ships are relative to each other.
Yes.
You sort of understand what's going on in the naval battle. It's partly because they're next to each other.
Yeah.
That bit's easy. They've come alongside.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. It's quite hard to televise sort of, battleship warfare in World War II. In that, it is just confusing. And they are quite far apart. These are very long-ranged.
And it's not sort of diving behind cover either, is it? Ultimately, it's sailing towards sort of firing your guns or trying to turn a bit so that all of your guns can get a shot.
And there's an iron law of physics about this as well. Like, how fast that ship can go. You know how fast your ship can go. You know the range of your guns. You know which headings you're on. You know when you're going to be in range, when you're not going to be in range. Now, whether or not you'll hit, there's an element of luck in. But there is this sort of mechanical, drawn out, we need to try and get out of range of them. We're going at this rate of knots. They're going at this rate. So, which maybe doesn't make for good television drama or film drama.
I think it picks up after Exeter is really badly damaged. And suddenly you get the drama of keeping this ship fighting. Yeah. And Gregson's sort of talking about whether he can ram it or not. There's some real stiff upper lip moments there.
Yeah, because fundamentally what you've got is, the German ship, the Graf Spee, has much longer range, much heavier guns. What the British task force have on their side is that there are more of them, so they can approach. They just need to head towards it quickly, ideally from different directions, firing. But yeah.
What they also have on their side, in fact, sort of taking a huge step back, is the Royal Navy can afford to lose 3 cruisers.
Yes.
And the German Navy can't afford to lose 1 pocket battleship.
Yeah.
So that's which isn't the nice bit at the start actually is when Anthony Quayle summons them all on board the flagship and sort of explains to us what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then they have gin.
Yeah, well, obviously.
So what time is it? So let's talk about memes for a moment. The meme I want is why don't we're going to spend the afternoon drilling very hard on this. Why don't we have some gin first?
Well, yeah, exactly. It's classic. It's perfect, isn't it?
Did we fight the war pissed, Duncan?
I think more so in the Navy than the other arms would be the fair way of putting it. The Navy only abolished their rum ration in the late 60s.
I didn't know they had abolished their rum ration.
Yeah, it was very controversial. It was a defence cutback under the Wilson government. And you got all of these, the letters pages of the newspapers are just filled with retired admirals saying, this is the death of British naval tradition. It was something like a third of a pint of rum a day we were still giving to people in the late 60s.
That's quite a lot.
It's quite a lot of rum.
Although, so I looked up, because a bit of book research I came across. This is... an intelligence lunch. In fact, this is a daily intelligence lunch in London, as described by Dennis Wheatley, who was working in Army intelligence at this point. The drinking, they would meet in a restaurant. They would have Pimm's, then
Sensible.
absinthe.
Yeah, okay, but going harder earlier than I would have if I was keeping
Pimm's and
moving.
absinthe, then sit down to eat a meal with wine.
Yeah.
And at the end of the meal, they would have port. Then Dennis Wheatley would go back to the war offices and go back to the cabinet war rooms and have a little nap in Attlee's bed. And I think not while Attlee was there. I'm not sure that Attlee was a big lunchtime drinker, but I absolutely astonishing levels of alcohol consumption. I don't think I could even lose a war after that.
But I suppose, that's a lot of people on a ship. And, you've all got distinct jobs and people can cover for your jobs. It's fine. I mean, you wouldn't want fighter pilots drinking gin before flying. But, I think...
they all drink bitter, interestingly, don't they, in the films? They're all,
something weak. Sensible.
Yeah, which is probably quite weak as well in 1940s.
Yeah.
So I think the bit of this film that you wouldn't want to miss is the battle.
Yes.
I think the second half of it, you can definitely make a cup of tea.
Yeah, okay, you could. Okay, if you really, if you were a cultural Philistine who didn't appreciate this film for the masterpiece it is, you could watch the opening. You could, have that relationship between Dove and Langsdorff. You could watch the battle. And then you could go and do something else and come back for the big sad end, the ship scuttling.
The other bit that I liked, because this is my area of interest, is the moment of the deliberate leak. Yeah. So there's a moment where they wish to put across this story that the entire Royal Navy is descending on Uruguay. And British diplomats in Uruguay, phone on an open line through to the British ambassador in Buenos Aires, who keeps trying to get them off the line.
Yeah.
And they're desperately trying to say the thing that they want the Germans to hear. Yeah. And he said, "What is wrong with you?" That I enjoyed.
I mean, but it's all sort of skirted over in the film, but it is really interesting in that, start off with, I think the rules of war at the time are the Graf Spee can have 24 hours in which she can make...
We learn a huge amount about the Hague Convention. We do. I didn't know.
She can make, she can 24 hours. She can make herself seaworthy. She can't make battle preparations, essentially. And, originally, the Royal Navy's attitude is, okay, fine, start the clock. She's out in 24 hours. Then we're going to hit her very hard. And then they think actual reinforcements are coming. So at that point, the entire British sort of calculus to just delay her, keep her in port, find excuses. And what the British and French start doing is they start getting every British and French merchant vessel they can find in the area to come in and out of Montevideo to sort of use up the sea lanes.
Because there is this rule that a combatant battleship can't leave within 24 hours.
Yes.
All of that is quite well explained. There is a fascinating, for television professionals like yourself, outside broadcast sort of running theme.
Yes.
In this film. Is outside broadcast like that?
Honestly, yes. To an extent.
People passing Newsnight, people passing you glasses of scotch the whole time.
Yeah. This was still the days when I smoked, so you could at least have a quick cigarette as long as the camera. Only once, in fact, was I standing waiting to go on whilst smoking a cigarette. Only once did the producer have to scream at me they were going live earlier so I could stamp out a cigarette before appearing on the nation's television screens with a cigarette in my mouth. But I've stopped smoking now, so it's fine.
There are, I think, 2 women in this film.
Yeah, again, you probably could have made a bit more of an effort given that lots of it is in fact set in Montevideo.
Which looks like a party. Actually, no, there's 3 women because there's the singer.
Yeah.
There's the telephone operator, who, questionable moment, gets a bit harassed by... you wouldn't catch a reporter either drinking on duty or harassing someone in this day and age. And there's Miss Shaw, who I think takes it away. Who doesn't even get a credit in the film. She's named on IMDb, but the sort of has several lines.
And this is a film, we should remind ourselves, where they credit the ships.
Yes. HMS Sheffield gets a credit. Miss Shaw. Casualty list. Do you know what the body count of the Battle of the River Plate was?
I don't actually.
Would you like me to tell you?
Yes, I do.
Yes, it's 108.
108.
108. I don't think we see all of those people die.
No, we don't. We don't. Honestly, this is a surprisingly blood-free war film. Is there any blood in the film?
So there's definitely a moment where there's a sailor dying.
Yes. But this is what's interesting is you get to see certainly the bridges of the three British ships during the actual battle, and only a little bit of the German. And what you realise is that, being on the bridge of a World War II cruiser during a naval battle is not like being on the bridge of a starship in Star Trek when there's a naval battle, where it seems there's some sort of terrible design flaw with every ship that's ever featured in any version of Star Trek in any iteration, where whenever it takes damage, one of the bridge panels will explode, killing some of the crew. Just invent circuit breakers or something.
Yes.
But it's not like that. So, even though some of these ships are taking hits, it's not as apparent in the bits they're showing.
No, I was thinking in vain of the best death. I think you see a sailor die, and that has to be the best.
But
really, we have to give the best death to the Graf Spee.
Yeah, we do. And she's not credited because she's an American ship. They didn't want that credit, but yeah, she is in some ways the star.
My other meme. So the memes I want are where's the sun? Is it over the yard arm? Can we have some gin? And the other meme that I want making out is the moment when HMS Cumberland arrives and she's spelling out the message, and this is just. So, this feels to me like the great Anthony Quayle moment when he's suddenly anticipation. And you sort of think, oh gosh, that's the Royal Navy. That's it. These are our values. This is a war where men knew where they not just men were men, but men knew where they ought to be in 3 days' time and set off in good time and
had time for gin.
Yes, drinking gin all the way. Stiffest upper lip. So I've got the crew of the Achilles.
Yeah.
A few new ventilation gaps here. Cut to highly damaged. I think it goes to John Gregson, though.
Do you?
Yeah, of the Exeter, the captain of the Exeter. Can make Plymouth if ordered.
I just think there's this whole sense, though, of I think in the end the stiffest upper lip is Langdorf. He's the one that stops this film having more than 20 minutes of battle footage by deciding to scuttle his own ship, and I think that final bit when he's clearly very depressed, but it's he's the one that's made the heart.
Yes, it's interesting that he does completely humanize it.
Yeah,
and yes, and maybe make it more interesting. I mean, I don't know if you've seen Greyhound, the Tom Hanks. Another film in which Tom Hanks plays somebody who must be 30 years younger than him. I mean, were destroyer captains really in their 60s? I'm not sure they were. But, in that's done entirely from the bridge of one ship, and the German submarine captain is allowed to taunt them over the radio. But essentially it's all.
See, this film just wouldn't work without the Germans. If it was just about the British task force, it would be an incredibly boring film. It would just be it would be task
to
force
be clear
sails around.
To listeners, I don't think this is an incredibly boring film, but I am surprised that this was one of the three most successful films in the year it came out. And
but without the Germans, this is a film of three British ships sailing up and down the South Atlantic till they see the Graf Spee. 20 minutes of shooty, lots more waiting. Graf Spee sinks. It's that long extended opening of the relationship between Captain Dove, the captured merchant Navy man, and Langdorf, and him. Yeah, we see as much of the German crew and the German important characters as we do of the Brits in this.
Dan Buster's dog moment for problematic moments. We've talked about sexual harassment.
Yeah.
I think we also have to question the American reporter's expense claims. I mean, there's an awful lot of scotch. Somebody in this film does say, "For you, the battle is over."
Yes, they do, don't they? And is this the origin?
I wondered that. I mean, it's not the war is over because it's actually it's when the captain's being set free. But I did let out a yelp of joy when I heard that uttered. The actual best line, which again is foreshadowing. I mean, I thought it was a good line, and then how it ends, and it's the best line is Langsdorff. Every commander is alone.
Yes.
Which sort of that tells you I'm going to go and kill myself off screen.
Yes.
You can tell your children about that or not. So we will leave it to you, the viewing audience. No war crimes.
No war crimes.
I think are completely honourable.
Completely honourable.
They even give their captives Christmas decorations.
Exactly.
That's how nice a war this is.
But that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, in the end, Langsdorff decides to save his crew. And and thereby save some British sailors as well. I could go out there and fight a completely pointless battle, and I might damage one British cruiser, I might damage two, might even sink one. But Britain's got lots of cruisers. My ship's gone either way. I'm going to avoid this bloodshed.
So the signal back to the Admiralty is something like many lives saved today or something, isn't it? I mean, they understood what they had seen.
Yes.
So introducing characters in this tiny part who went on to be a legend. The Bernard
not
Lee.
HMS Sheffield. We've established
Not
that.
HMS Sheffield, no, who sort of looked so promising. Bernard Lee, who plays Captain Dove. Do you know who he became?
Go on.
He's M.
Is he?
He's the classic M.
Oh, there we go.
Without
1970s, 1970s.
And another Lee, Christopher Lee. So you would not, the barman in the bar where the American reporter is holding forth is played by Christopher Lee, who sort of 2 years from this will be playing Dracula and.
Really?
For younger listeners,
I
I don't know if we have any younger listeners, and if we do, I don't know what's wrong with them.
Count Dooku.
But Saruman, I was going to say.
I was going to go Count Dooku. Star Wars, but yeah.
Or Count Dooku, I think.
Count Dooku, yeah,
Yes.
I'd be in trouble for that.
There are no implausible moments because it's all true.
Yeah.
I mean, you can quibble about what exactly they made up, but it's all
Wrong-
essentially
wrong number of funnels
Wrong
on the
number
Graf
of
Spee
funnels.
roll.
Because they can't paint them
moments.
out because they were using actual ships.
Yeah.
Duncan, is this the operation that changed the course of World War II?
Well, no, but it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's an interesting
Okay, is
operation
this
done-
at least the operation at the point at which the Nazis start thinking we can't let our battleships out?
Yeah, I think that's fair. The battleships go out less frequently after that.
We talk about Sink the Bismarck, but the Bismarck sort of spends most of the war in a Norwegian fjord.
Yeah, most of them do. She comes out, she sinks the hood, and then she gets sunk herself. All of these pocket battle. German Navy spends a fortune building these pocket battleships, which are interesting ships in that they're sort of roughly the size of cruisers, but they're much better armored, big guns. And then most of them spend the war achieving very little, and and again it's all about the U-boats again, the German Navy. So yeah, but it's a snapshot of that early part of the war when naval warfare looks different, and it's also even in the Pacific where you've got a much bigger naval war. That becomes a naval war of aircraft carriers. And, once you get to the really big battles in the Pacific, Midway, Coral Sea, all that, these are fleets that don't see each other.
That's torpedo bombers and
torpedo bombers
dive
and fighters
bombers
and they'll fight you.
Yeah.
So this is one
the
of
ships don't see each other. So this is a battle in which the ships see each other.
This is this rare moment in which, battleships firing big guns at each other.
Another legacy. So HMS Ajax has a sort of afterlife. Do you know about the town of Ajax in Ontario?
I do not.
The town of Ajax in Ontario, which was it's some kind of war new town, and all the streets are named after sailors from the Ajax, except one which is named after Langsdorff.
Oh, there you go.
Controversially at the time.
You wouldn't want the house on Langsdorff Street, would you, if you're moving into Ajax, Ontario?
Worth dying for. You think this film stands up to repeated viewing?
I actually do. So this is I must have seen it. I must have seen it 2 or 3 times many, many years ago. I saw it when it was on BBC Two last Christmas. It was on
They're still showing it?
Yeah, they showed it last Christmas. So I missed
right.
it live. Then somebody told me, and it was on iPlayer, so I watched it on iPlayer last Christmas. And then I rewatched it. I rewatched it for this, having seen it about 11 months before. And yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. It's got some great performances. It's got some great cinematography. It's just, right, you go and see, if you're in central London, you go and see HMS Belfast moored in the Thames.
Yes.
And it's a massive ship. And if you stand and look at it from one of the bridges, you realize how big it is. And then you realise what sort of a feat it is filming with 5 or 6 of these things. You sort of get a sense of the scale. I think it's a really, really well-told story, well acted, impressive bit of cinematography. I think it bears repeated viewing.
The thing now, you realise when you're watching, every TV series has a high-definition drone. And so it's suddenly very, very easy to do a great sweeping shot. And Top Gun, famously, I think in the original Top Gun, they got the US Navy to turn an aircraft carrier around so it caught the sun better. They absolutely clearly have done that in the new Top Gun film, because there is a fantastic moment where the sun...
Yeah.
Whereas, yes, in the 1950s, this was all hard. And actually, you can see right at the start that there's a moment where the sea is not.
Yeah.
The sea is slanted across the screen.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, that's because it's quite hard filming at the sea.
Yeah.
Nobody can get the camera level, so we'll just use that bit.
Yeah, exactly. It adds to the atmosphere. That's how I like to think about it.
Well, as Duncan, having scuttled himself, sinks slowly below the waves onto a sandbank, that's been the Battle of the River Plate. I'm Rob Hutton. That was A Pod Too Far with me, Robert Hutton, and Duncan Weldon. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, and if you liked it, rate and review us. You can drop us a line at podtoofar@gmail.com or on Twitter @podtoofar. If you want to watch along with us, next week, went the day well.